Human Frailty was the first Hunters and Collectors album that gelled across the board, you know, good songs. And the way it started with Say Goodbye is a complete knockout.
The whole album is about a girl I was in love with. May was her name.
You know, Mark's always been a boots and all guy, and when Mark's in a relationship, everybody knows about it.
It was this music that was always blasting in the house on Friday night as my sisters would be getting ready to go out. It felt honest and like this guy really meant whatever he was singing about.
It seemed like, you know, the protagonist in the songs was trying to make an effort to understand women, but sort of failing, and it certainly, you know, as a late adolescent, that certainly was kind of where I was at as well.
And just the desperation.
The thing about Human Frailty, I think, is, you know, I was in a really emotionally kind of switched on period in my life. I mean, there was just a lot of things going on, happening to me, and I was just bringing them in, you know, these events, and I was just writing every night, and it was just, you know, I just had a lot of raw material.
Good evening. Throw your arms around me.
When Mark brought in the lyric for Throw Your Arms Around Me, it was the first sort of straight-up love song he'd ever written. There were plenty of songs before that were developed out of relationships, but they weren't directly sort of person-to-person love songs. And it was quite a milestone as far as the band was concerned.
And I really felt like I'd mastered this simple formula, you know, which I'd never done before, and I'd written it about a girl I was in love with, you know, and I just thought, you know, it was a home run, you know, and there were a couple of guys in the group that it was, you know, this song about a girl, you know, but they didn't know. I found this tiny little bedsit, and I just moved into that, and May used to come around and stay there with me, and she called it a rat's nest. And you know, it's just this tiny little room, and I wasn't particularly clean, and but in a way she actually liked it. I think she kind of liked it, because it was right up high at the back of the Leo Spaghetti Bar, and it was all painted blue, and it had lots of light in it. It was really quite a nice little place. And I mean, the rain used to sort of beat against the window on one side that looked out across the bay. The rain and the wind had hit the glass, and it would rattle at night, and, you know, we just used to lie there listening to that, and, you know, it was, you know, really comforting and romantic.
our most recorded song. Seriously, we recorded about 5 versions of that song because we kept getting told that song is a hit. You've got to, can you just approach it from a different angle? And we did from countless angles.
They brought a song that they knew was a smash, but they wouldn't let the song evolve. I remember different members of the band coming in, playing it to me on different stereos, trying to convince me that sonically this was the Hunters sound.
That's such a simple song. It's, you know, E-A-E-B. That's right, isn't it?
E-A-E-B.
I was just wrestling with that arpeggio and trying to write a song around that. And then I think the next thing that happened was, okay, what are the chords I need to put under it to make that arpeggio sit? So it really had to be very simple.
Sort of became successful by word of mouth rather than by radio replay.
Hit. It was never a hit. It never sold any copies. It's etched into a lot of psyches around Australia and even the world, but it was never a hit. So they made us keep recording. And we will never forget.
You will make me call you. Australia's #1 karaoke song, I believe. Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is. It's number one. It's Australia's #1.
The song just had this life of its own that's just turned a very simple story into something much bigger. It's not an easy song to sing. The chorus is, it's got that long throw, that really long, drawn out syllable at the top of the chorus, which is really not particularly savvy songwriting. There's something a little bit Celtic about it, and it's awkward in the sense that it's not really, it doesn't marry well with pop. It kind of sounds like it comes from another era. I mean, it's deeply romantic. The thing I remember about recording Human Frailty was, I remember having this conversation at the Standard Hotel and saying to them, we have to make a commercial record.
What we decided to do was explore the melody thing more often.
I guess people were maybe like starting to write in just a slightly more traditional commercial way.
And I remember consciously thinking, I want to write pop songs,
Now, the whole idea of having a hit like, I don't know, like Kylie Minogue or something, no, we couldn't contemplate that. But actually getting played on the radio, yeah, of course we wanted to get played on the radio. Up to that point, the best we could hope for was the occasional play on Triple R or something like that.
We'd sort of made a conscious decision that we had to move beyond the inner suburbs, that if you were going to survive in terms of financially sustaining such a large group of people, you had to be able to move out and play in the suburbs. And they were, that's a different beast altogether. And a song like Say Goodbye and the clip that went with it, Mark with his head in the bonnet of a V8, was much more closely associated with the suburbs than it was with the inner city. And you saw that transition visually as you did with the songs themselves.
When you look at that, sheet that's in the Human Frailty album, and we're all sitting around in that pub, and, Rob did all that artwork of beer coasters with the logo on it. It was all kind of aimed at that sort of Western suburban, Sydney RSL club aesthetic. Rob Miles had a huge influence on the way he kind of art directed the band and had a big influence on the way the band reinvented its image.
We talk about where we saw the band being in the sort of pantheon of Australian culture and all that sort of stuff. We were interested in that, and the idea of going out there and reinventing it and changing it around was talked about.
Around that time we started playing more suburban shows. We relaxed a bit in the dress department. Flannel shirts became all the rage, and Mark started developing this sort of blokey persona that he probably avoided a little bit in the early days.
I remember them criticising me once for forcing them to dress up, and then suddenly they were always it was the Eureka flag and the blue singlet and the proletariat hero. Now that's just as contrived as anything you're going to wear, because it wasn't really much.
I think that their music and their lyrics was always something of the urban landscape. Like, Mark's a very intense person, and if you've been around Mark for more than 10 minutes, you kind of realise he's constantly trawling, metaphorically, everything that's going on around him. So whether some of those images became more suburban, maybe that's just going back to who you are and then moving forward into the next stage of your development.
I will come for you at night time. I will raise you from your sleep. I will kiss you in four places. I'll go running along your street. I will squeeze the life out of you. You will make me laugh and make me cry. We will never forget it. You will make me call your name, and I'll shout it to the blue summer sky. We may never meet again, so shed your skin and let's get started. You will throw your arms around me. You will throw your arms around me.
Music! Monday night. Who's ready to tear up the dance floor and party hard? When the mighty Bush Boys throw a big bash, timing is everything.
It's important to arrive late, even at your own party.
And an urban beach party encourages some shameless behaviour.
Best night of my life.
So don't be square. Join the fun with all new comedy, Monday night on SBS.
Introducing the new generation Honda Legend.
At Safeway Liquor, right now you can save 20% off all your favourite wines. That's 20% off all wines when you buy 6 or more bottles. Hurry in to Safeway Liquor today.
The right training gets you more than a piece of paper. It also gets you the skills you need to do the job you want, which could mean a better career with more job security. So we've changed Victoria's training system to make it better for you, with more places, better access and greater choice. Securing jobs for your future. For information, SMS skills to 134688 or visit skills.vic.gov.au. Authorised by the Victorian Government, Melbourne.
the feel that I heard the very first time I walked into a rehearsal morphed into talking to a stranger. And that song pretty much encapsulated what we were after in that whole first period.
It was the aftermath of the Boys Next Door, so it was a little bit after that, and the birthday party was starting. And basically the whole subculture tended to focus on a number of venues, one of them being the Crystal Ballroom, the George Hotel in St Kilda.
Hunters and Collectors rehearsed there, and you know, John Archer had his bass, I was going to say his bass amp, but I meant his PA, installed there, and you know, semi-permanently. And you know, we cut our teeth in that room.
It wasn't just the sort of post-punk music thing in the ballroom. The crossovers were huge. The musical influences went into the fashion, into the art world, into photography, like with the photography of Bill Henson, and people like the early version of Alana Hill.
And so it was an incredibly creative place. You were inspired to try and come up with an original idea. And it was all about the now. It was never about the future. It was always about the now, or what you did at that point in time. Mark was talking about, you know, he was the intense one, so I was probably more attracted to him as a musician. And he said he'd had this group of people and he was trying to put a band together. And I said, oh, I want to play metal percussion. And we drove around in this car to this old house that I used to live in, and we went out into the backyard because it had been demolished, and it was kind of a frosty night, and there was this huge old hot water cylinder sort of covered in ice, twinkling in the moonlight, and Mark went, that's it. You know, that's what we're looking for. So we hauled it to the next rehearsal, and I played it with a couple of old xylophone hammers, and there was no looking back from there.
Jack came to me with the lines for Talking to a Stranger. He said, I've got this piece of music. I think you're going to like it.
You know, I approached Mark and John about going up and having a blow on trumpet.
He constructed all those. It was almost like chamber music for French horn, trombone and trumpet.
We all played in national music camps and orchestras together. And
we came from the very cool Melbourne Youth Orchestra.
What brought Hunter's sort of the era into being was the sort of combination of the new punk interpretation of funk.
I always wanted to write poetry. That's always what I'd sort of imagined I'd do, but I really loved funk as well. Like I loved Michael Jackson and the Talking Heads. I loved that white funk that the Talking Heads played, and the band, Greg Pirano really brought a lot of that to the band.
There they were with horns and really loud percussion, drums everywhere. Greg Pirano banging away on this gas cylinder. Often it was a cacophony, but it was really exciting.
You know, when there was 10 of them or 15 at some stage across the stage, it was such an experience, you know, sort of to go there and just, it was really something.
But I think there was a certain kind of strange majesty about that. It was very, very dark music.
It was unique at the time. There was no one else in Australia doing it. And so we did get a lot of success very quickly because of that.
It was the beginning of all that fit and music scene. Those filmmakers were really trying to do something different. They were really trying to make art to marry with the music.
The thing that really capped it off was the film that Lowenstein and the people involved were so much part and fans of the band that they really had a pretty weird vision. It was still to this day was a unique film clip.
So I think they had a contract out, and they were sort of pretty much fairly derisive about this contract. One clause of which I remember said, free of blemishes and scratches. The final thing had to be... So we actually went out to actually fill the whole thing with blemishes and scratches.
Hunters and collectors always wrote together in a room. We used to joke about it being an autonomous workers collective, but I guess in some ways it was.
Well, I mean, it's just a beautiful phrase, an autonomous collective.
Most of the song ideas were initiated by Mark, and they were brought to the group.
Someone might have a couple of chords, someone might have a riff, someone might have Mark sometimes had lyrics.
It was a really democratic system. Everyone felt equal. I think that was a big thing with hunters and collectors, that the lack of hierarchy. Yeah, it was very admirable, especially on Mark's part.
The thing is, you look at the way teams are organised, how you orchestrate cooperation between, the Carlton members of the Carlton Football Club, it's communism. It's just the way people organise themselves in order to achieve a goal.
It was a very self-sufficient group. Michael Waters, who was the accountant, automatically did the bookwork. That's a big plus. When the band's on the road, you have your own accountants. Doug was a qualified doctor. That was also a big bonus. John Archer, the bass player, was an engineer, so he pretty much built the PA.
The other side of that too is that other bands would see that as a measure of your success. They'd go, oh, Hunters and Collectors, they own their own PA. Oh gee, they're doing well. They own their own PA. But in fact, we didn't. John owned it. We had nothing to do with it. We were paying John for the illusion of our success.
I remember once he broke his hand, like he sort of crushed his hand somehow, doing something physical. And we had to tour, so he kind of got all this gaffer tape and kind of taped this whole section of his hand so that it was permanently kind of in this position, and then proceeded to just go for days just doing that, and then it worked, and then it was black gaffer tape. He was I think he just must have been popping Panadines or something to try and get himself through the worst of it, and then gradually the hand mended and the gaffer tape came off, It's just insane.
Both Mark and Doug were larger than life, and Doug's very grounded, and Mark's he's volatile, and that probably would have been good for each other.
I think that, he sort of played a kind of a paternal role, I needed reaction around me, and he never shied away from just calling a spade a spade.
There was this whole thing in the early 80s that you couldn't reach your artistic goals staying in Australia. You had to go to Europe, you had to go to England and sort of do it there. Hindsight, it wasn't such a great idea.
When the birthday party left for England, there was a trail of other bands following them going to England.
Nick Cave just reinvented himself. Something happened in England to him, and that band just reinvented itself through his vision, And I did quite the opposite. I went over there and completely disintegrated. I couldn't handle not being the centre of attention,
They literally came back with their tails very firmly between their legs. I mean, it was a disaster and a slightly different set of circumstances, and the band could quite easily have sort of finished.
We sort of gradually came around to realising that whatever kudos we'd had when, you know, when we first started in the beginning of the 80s. It was well and truly gone, and we didn't really have a, you know, I suppose there was no sort of focus to what we were doing.
And we had a meeting and Greg announced he was leaving.
There was never any power struggle. He was the front person. He wrote the lyrics. He was starting to write all the songs. Like, no power struggle there. He was the powerful one, and I didn't want to be there anymore, you know.
Greg, who was such a big part of the sound to me, sort of went off, and the band really changed, I guess, the whole fabric.
They started to move away from that more chaotic earlier sound of Hunters and Collectors.
And at the time I thought it was a pretty drastic thing, because I thought that sound was such a big part of the Hunter sound, but they knew what they were doing, and when the time came to record Human Frailty, it didn't take them long to get back on track.
Beer I'm not having a beer.
I really like the song Dog. I remember we did a really bad cover version of it in our very early days, in fact at our very first gig.
Dog was a song that started from something to play at soundcheck when we were checking the bass, which was just pedaling a note for a while, because it sort of got boring. And I just kept developing that soundcheck thing until it became Dog.
When you start bleeding, you don't all night work. It's a place where the sick God loves.
Oh, well, that's just pure lust, you know. That's what that's about, you know. Just being lost in the, just going around to her house and just getting into it, you know, and the world disappears.
I thought it was partially based on Livewire by AC/DC as well. Those opening chords of Mark's were very like the opening of Livewire.
Come around in the morning and I come around at night.
Because there'd always been so many people and so many voices and so many instruments in the earlier versions of the band. Then when it was taken apart and put back together again and built from that core three-piece, then you could, you know, for the first time the band could do three-piece songs.
And the whole three-piece idea was very attractive to me as a drummer, so, and I still really love the songs in Hunters that we did as three pieces, things like Dog. Fabulous fun to play with just the three of you, and the space that brings to the music is fabulous. No problem with the horns or anything, you know, it's just...
Would be on my top 10 list of all-time favourite Hunter songs. Dog would be. Dog is definitely up there.
I was just going to say you sounded fairly dismissive about it, and you didn't need to, you know, apologise for it. It's a great song.
We love it.
Yeah.
We think it's great.
We couldn't get a word in.
Sorry.
I think it's probably fair to credit X, who were a three-piece, as an influence after we spiralled out of control and dissolved and then reformed.
We did this gig at the Manly Tavern, and X supported us, and I just remember watching them going, you know, what are we doing? I mean, here's this three-piece, and they're just tearing the place apart. It had so much energy, and they had all this pride, you know, and focus, you know, and then Ryland's just standing there, kind of just this look on his face and his lips out. Hidden behind that wall of power they had were these really beautifully crafted songs, you know.
You know, the best way for him to get, you know, sweep out all the art school pretensions from Hunters and Collectors was to become this raw and dirty group. But once again, I think that it was a concept, you know, rather than a natural progression. Had a unique sound. They had that huge sound of John Archer and that kind of swing of Doug Faulkner, and they worked perfectly as a combination. And so Mark knew that he could go out there with this stripped down version of Hunters and Collectors with the horns there, and it'd still be just as powerful because he had a huge rhythm section behind him that he could always rely on.
I've been hearing around the town.
I really came to like the songs at the other end of the album. And one of my faves actually is the one written by Ian Rylan and his wife, Stuck on You.
Our bands were playing gigs together, and maybe they liked that song the best. They did a good job with Stuck on You. That they added that little bridge, and it's actually quite hooky.